welcome to the program. It's Tuesday. It's great to have you here. There's a lot of really interesting stuff happening all day today and particularly tonight. If you've been following the story of Hannah Kobayashi, it's just sort of weird. We can't quite figure out what the story is with Hannah. You probably know, she got on a plane in Hawaii and flew to California, to Los Angeles, and was supposed to connect to New York. But she missed the connection. Likely it was too short and she couldn't make it, but no matter what, she's in LAX and her bags have gone on to New York, and then she just vanishes from the airport. She's back and forth to the airport a few times over a couple of days. She's seen at a metro stop, and then she's never seen again. Her family flies in from Hawaii to help search for their loved one, and a complete tragedy befalls them again. Hannah's dad takes his life near the airport, presumably out of heartbreak, having looked for his daughter. And then, even more bizarre, after the police say Hannah's been spotted crossing into Mexico on foot on her own, and we believe, police say, she is doing this of her own volition, the family is not quite there. The story is not there for them. Tonight, they join me to talk about what they know, what they haven't been told, what they didn't see, and why this remains such a mystery. That is coming up. Also, in the story of JohnBenét Ramsey, 28 years ago this Christmas, 6-year-old JohnBenét was found dead in her basement, and no one has ever been able to solve this case. That in itself is bonkers. But suddenly, this case is back in the zeitgeist, a bit like the Menendez case. A big Netflix special highlights the investigation, the missteps, the bad focus, the mess-ups, and suddenly, the Boulder police are talking in a way they've never talked before. So we are talking too. Tonight, an investigator who was on that case from day one is going to be here to set the record straight on things he saw and things he never agreed with, even though the police continued down that track. He's going to join us and talk about why this comment has been made by the Boulder police that maybe 2025 is their year. Is it or isn't it? And also, I hadn't thought of this before, but when you put the pieces next to each other, it actually makes sense. Bundy and Cobberger's alleged murder of 4 students at the University of Idaho, next to Ted Bundy's murder of multiple sorority girls at Florida State University decades ago. Wow. If you do the compare, it's creepy. And there is a lawyer who stood by Ted Bundy, defending him, trying to keep him from the electric chair, who says he's watching the Bundy Cobberger case in awe and seeing all the parallels. And there's one critical mistake he says Bundy made, and he wonders if BK's making it too. He happens to be on the show tonight, so don't go anywhere. That's big. When a person goes missing, and then suddenly is no longer exactly missing, does that mean the mystery is solved? If that person is Hannah Kobayashi, the answer is no, not by a long shot. Hannah is the 30-year-old photographer from Hawaii who vanished in Los Angeles after missing or skipping her connecting flight to New York on November the 8th. Her family flew to LA to help search for Hannah, but their fears only multiplied when they got some weird text messages, supposedly from Hannah, that didn't sound like her and really sounded a little more like she might be in trouble. And then came reports of surveillance video of Hannah at a metro stop in a sketchy part of LA. But nothing prepared them for the bombshell that police dropped just over 24 hours ago.
Late yesterday, after traveling to the U.S.-Mexico border, we reviewed video surveillance from U.S. Customs and Border Protection, which clearly shows Kobayashi crossing the United States border on foot into Mexico. She was alone with her luggage and appeared unharmed. At this time, Kobayashi's case has been classified as a voluntary missing person.
So still missing, sort of, but apparently of her own accord, the police say, for reasons still very much a mystery. Police say Hannah entered Mexico November 12th, just 4 days after landing in Los Angeles, and 3 weeks ago tonight, which means that she might very well have seen the same headlines that we all did in the days that followed, including these headlines about Hannah's father, Ryan Kobayashi. Mr. Kobayashi made the trip to Los Angeles and then died soon afterwards by suicide outside a parking garage near LAX. And yet still no word from Hannah. And for the people who love her, still no idea why any of this is happening. I'm joined now by Hannah's sister, Sydney Kobayashi, and the family's attorney, who's a very familiar face on this program, Sarah Azari, NewsNation's legal analyst. Thank you to both of you. Sydney, I want to begin with you. And first of all, I'm just really sorry that you and your family are going through what you're going through. I cannot imagine what it's like. And then to sort of see this news conference, do you have any idea why Hannah is staying silent so long?
I honestly, I've said this from day one. I feel like she is in danger. I feel like this is completely out of character for her. I've known her my entire life. She's been one of my best friends. She's always kept in contact with the family. She's always checked in, and this is just absolutely out of her character. And especially after, if she had seen what happened with my father and his passing, she would have definitely reached out by now. There's no way that she wouldn't have reached out knowing the type of person that she is.
So, Sydney, we all learned yesterday with the news conference that Hannah had crossed on foot, seemingly by herself of her own volition into Mexico. When did you and the family learn about that detail?
We learned the same day that the public did. And that is very frustrating. It's very disturbing.
You weren't given any advance notice?
No, not at all. We, they claim to have been, they claim to have been informing us as up to date as possible with everything and whatnot. But we literally found out the same day that they released this press conference, which wasn't even ran by us. And that's where they decided to let us know. Had we have known that she had crossed the border on the 12th, that would have given us so much more of a different direction of where to look and what to do as far as this is concerned. So no, that's absolutely, it's just mind blowing to me that they're saying this, that they kept us in contact and kept us in the loop, because in my opinion, they did not. Not every step of the way.
That brings me to the video. Yeah, Sydney, that brings me to the surveillance video of Hannah talking to a stranger at a metro stop. When did you and the family see that video?
So none of our family has seen this video other than supposedly our aunt. None of our family has seen this video other than her, allegedly. So that's been very frustrating to know that, that footage was not released to anyone other than her, or you would assume it would be released to our immediate family, like my father. So none of us have seen any of this other than
Sarah, you normally practice. Yeah, Sarah, as the family's attorney, you normally practice criminal law, but you have been retained to represent the family in the matters that are in front of them. It just seems really odd to me that the family wouldn't be kept right in the loop, helping the police and the police helping them, because the goal is the same, to find out what's behind the mystery of Hannah disappearing. What do you make of that?
Well, look, unfortunately, this is not the first situation I've had where I've tried to help a victim's family, and there's been these I don't want to accuse the LAPD or the FBI. I'm sure they've done their due diligence, but sometimes it's just not enough. And I think there's a disconnect here. I was absolutely shocked. I just recently stepped into this case with my team, and I was shocked to learn that this family's been kept in the dark. And, on that note, there's also been a lot of confusion caused by Hannah's aunt and Sydney's aunt. And I think that at this point now that we are on the case and sort of picking up where law enforcement apparently has left off, Sydney wants to make it clear to the viewers and to the public that the family is really her and her mother and her uncle and that side. Now, that I'm assisting them, and that statements made by her aunt are not necessarily reliable.
Well, that's heartbreaking to think there's this disconnect. Sydney, what do you make of that? Why do you think that your Aunt Laurie has been making comments to the press that don't pretend, or don't align with the facts in the case so far?
I really have no idea at this point, and it's very unfortunate and sad to me that you have to question family. We have decided to hire Sarah as our family attorney, and the fact that she has gone rogue and she wants to disconnect from it, that's on her own being. But I will do whatever I can to protect our family at this point, and do whatever I can to still find my sister. And I no longer want to have any connection with the confusion that I feel like she's caused since this case started with my sister. So I wanted to make that known to the public that she is no longer working with the family or our attorney at this point.
Well, I'm sorry to hear there is that schism, in the family. I wanted to ask you, Sydney, about Hannah in the months, days, weeks leading up to her leaving LAX. Had she mentioned anything to you about discourse in her life, depression, sadness, anxiety, a desire to break free from social media and go off the grid? Had she said anything just about how life was going?
No, not at all. And we keep in touch. We all keep in touch here and there, and we all understand that we have our own lives going on, and that's understandable. But I feel like my sister and I are close enough for her to let me know if she's in distress, or if something really dramatic was happening in her life. And this is just so bizarre because she's never mentioned going to Mexico, and it just doesn't make sense to me because I believe this is her first time ever even being in LA, and for her to go and do this on her own from LA and to cross the border of Mexico on her own with supposedly no phone, it just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me, and it feels like someone else is involved or controlling her or doing something. And I can't discount the fact that, just because she was allegedly seen alone, that doesn't necessarily mean, just because there's so much exposure on this case, it doesn't mean that she's necessarily alone and someone's just doing this from a distance, knowing that they don't want to be exposed.
So, Sarah, this sounds like a territory where you can really help as the family's representative. Look, a family gets thrust into something. This is territory they never, ever imagined they'd be in. They don't know this landscape, but you do. So what are the next steps, Sarah, to try to figure out why is she in Mexico? Where might she be? And is there someone else involved?
Well, remember, Ashleigh, that this snapshot surveillance video is from November 12th. So there's still several weeks that have gone by since then. So our hope is that she is obviously still safe. And I'm now deploying a team in Mexico to continue the search down there. So for us and the family, this is not at all over. The fact that the LAPD is deeming it to be voluntary doesn't make it any lesser of a disappearance and a missing person case. to this family. So we're going to be focusing, I'm flying back to Los Angeles, I'm in New York now, but we're going to be focusing on putting a team together in Mexico and continuing the search there, and trying to locate her. And if the LAPD, as they say, this is voluntary, she doesn't want to be with the family, or she did this on her own, we still need to locate her and confirm that. Because to us, there's a lot that doesn't add up. There was an ex-boyfriend that she'd planned this trip with. She flew with this ex-boyfriend. Did anybody talk to flight attendants to see if there was any interaction on this flight between her and this ex-boyfriend? I mean, there's a lot of questions and there's no answers.
Yeah,
but,
and I also just
to that, Sydney, I want, go ahead.
No, I just want to clarify too that I don't know if we mentioned this earlier, but LAPD also has not released any footage to the family at all. They're basically just determining that this is my sister, but they haven't released any footage to us to confirm that this is my sister that they're claiming to cross the border. And that's something that I really need everyone to understand, is that none of us have seen this at all to confirm. You would think that they would go to an immediate, either myself or my mom or someone to be like, hey, is this Hannah? Is this her? No, they automatically went straight to determining that was her. So we don't even know if this is my sister.
Sydney, can I ask you if she does, I know she doesn't have her phone, but if she has some access to the internet or social media and she happens to see this interview, do you have a message for your sister?
Absolutely. I want her to know that she is loved and she is supported in every way, shape, or form. And no matter what she's going through right now, she needs to know that she has a place to come home to. And I can't stress it enough. She is such a light, in our lives. And she's just such an amazing and beautiful woman. And she's my baby girl, she's my baby sister. And, I really hope that if she does see this, just let us know, give us a message or something to let us know that you are safe and that you are okay. Because you have so many people behind you and you have so many people who love and care for you that just want to know that you're genuinely okay. Even if you're not, just something, some sort of message, phone call, something.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing that, and I sure hope she does get that message. Cindy Kobayashi, thank you for doing this. And Sarah Azaria, as always, I appreciate your input. Stay in touch with us, keep us apprised, and we are on your team. Thanks again for tonight.
Thank you, Ashleigh.
We're going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere, because I want you to meet one of the original investigators in the JohnBenét Ramsey murder case from 28 years ago this Christmas. And when I say original, I mean day one. I'm going to ask him why he believes there were multiple intruders in JohnBenét's home and whether there are details that the police have kept from the public all these years. That's all next. If you were with us last night, you know that police in Boulder, Colorado are said to be hopeful, like they've never been hopeful before. And when I say Boulder, Colorado, you know it's likely no other story, right? It's the case of JohnBenét Ramsey. JohnBenét, brutally murdered in her own home 28 years ago this Christmas. We don't know why identifying JohnBenét's killer is suddenly within reach, as one source describes it. But a task force is focused on this case alone, and the new Boulder chief wants this case solved. And thanks to a brand new Netflix docuseries, a vast new audience is paying attention. Doc is called Cold Case: Who Killed JohnBenét Ramsey? And props to the producers, because I learned a lot of things that I'd either long forgotten or that I never knew at all, despite having covered this case myself for 3 decades. For the next several days on this program, we're going to break those details down deep not just the surface, deep into the details. We're going to dig into some of the more perplexing mysteries of the case, including the killer's apparent entry point into the house, a metal grate over a broken basement window leading to the wine cellar where JohnBenét's body was found. There's so many details pertaining to that entry point. Also, at autopsy, the medical examiner found undigested pineapple in JohnBenét's stomach, which appeared to have come from a bowl of pineapple on the Ramsey's kitchen counter. But when did she eat it? And who gave it to her? And you know about the mysterious ransom note, long and rambling, just crazy note, demanding the exact amount of money that John Ramsey received as a Christmas bonus that year. Police thought surely that meant that a family member was involved, but the bonus information was on John's desk in the home, which an intruder could easily have seen if he'd broken into the house hours earlier and snooped around for hours and hours while the family was away all day. For years, investigators were hyper-focused on JohnBenét's parents, John and Patsy Ramsey. And weirdly enough, JohnBenét's then 9-year-old brother, Burke. But one investigator took a much broader view. His name is John San Augustine, and he's a retired commander with the El Paso County, Colorado Sheriff's Office. He was on this case from day one, and he also worked as a private investigator for the Ramsey family, and he is kind enough to join me live tonight. John, thanks so much for being on. I really appreciate being able to talk to you. I have so many questions. Let me start right away. This business about the Boulder police being optimistic. Were you as jolted by the comment, optimism, that the case could be solved in 2025?
Well, Ms. Banfield, I mean, I guess the way I look at it is what is Boulder PD supposed to tell the general public? That we don't know what we're doing, that we don't have we're not getting close to anything. I mean, the best thing that they probably can say right now is, to kind of hold this at bay while this case is getting more attention, is to say that, this case is getting closer to some type of closure. And the reality is that really for 28 years, ma'am, this case has gone nowhere. And the reason why it has gone nowhere is because we continue to try and fit a square object in a round hole, and that is the Ramsey family, right? The narrative has been since day one that it had to be either John or Patsy, or heaven forbid, we even have people that at one point believed that Burke Ramsey was responsible for the murder of his sister. I mean, this case has literally just been locked in on the Ramsey family. So to hear that, we're around the corner and we're close to getting, this case being solved, I think it's just a way to hold off, right, while the case is getting attention again, because for 28 years, we really have gone nowhere with this. It's always been, the Ramsey family, and they've been hiding behind, their attorneys or hiding behind whoever. And the reality is that we have never really looked at the evidence in the case. And that's the danger in this, is that investigators have not investigated.
Yeah, it's important to note at this juncture that it took a very long time for Boulder authorities to finally say publicly, we're sorry. The Ramseys didn't do this. They are cleared. They are not under an umbrella of suspicion that they were under all the way to Patsy's death. She was never cleared before she died. And so I have to ask you, as somebody who was there early, oftentimes police will disagree, right? But the Boulder police are always referred to in a monolith, right? The Boulder police did that, thought this, screwed that up. How many people like you felt differently, felt there might have been multiple intruders, felt that, maybe there were other people that they needed to look at instead of just hammering away at the John and Patsy theory?
To be honest with you, I think that list was very small. I mean, outside of probably Lou Smith, who was involved in the case in the very early stages, he actually, brought me on to help him. And maybe the former prosecutor, Trip DeMuth, who had a very, open mind to the investigation. I will tell you, Ms. Banfield, I don't think outside of those two gentlemen that there was ever really anybody looking at anybody other than the family. And that's why this case has been where it has stood for 28 years, is that we haven't opened ourselves up to what, who else could have done this, right? Whether we're talking about one intruder or two intruders, or, what are we talking about? The evidence in this case is so overwhelming that it links to somebody else other than the Ramsey family, but yet we keep doing things to ignore that evidence because it doesn't fit the narrative. It doesn't fit the narrative.
John, let me ask you this. Going back over the docuseries, which I highly recommend to everyone who's watching right now, there's a lot of information in there that I didn't know. I didn't know that the grate that you'd open up to get into the well and enter the basement window, I didn't realize there was foliage under the grate, meaning it had been lifted and put down over that foliage. I didn't know that loose mitts could fit into that window. I'd always heard the headlines, no, nobody could fit down there, that's not the issue. So knowing that an intruder could have entered that home early in the day, because the Ramseys were gone for hours that day, and then spent all day snooping and stalking through that home, getting very familiar with the layout of the labyrinthian house, and maybe even going into John's office and seeing right there on the top of his desk his annual Christmas bonus at $118,000. Why was that shoved to the bottom of the well? That just seemed to me to be really critical information.
And to add to that, Ms. Banfield, I mean, what you have to also look at is not just that grate, right? Let's take a look further in. Let's look at how there's a broken window. Let's talk about glass being on a suitcase. Let's talk about a scuff mark on the wall. Let's talk about popcorn packing material found in the same area where JohnBenét's body was found. I mean, look, none of that makes sense if you think that the family did it. And so that was ignored. It was never really looked into, much like we never looked at the stun gun marks to her face and to her back. We didn't look at the fact that the paintbrush that was used, the actual garrote that was manufactured, that there's a piece that's missing. That brush was actually broken into at least 3 pieces. But where's that other piece, right? Was this a trophy that was taken from a pedophile? So there's a lot of things, right? There's foreign DNA under her fingernails and in her long johns and in her underwear. So we look at all of this, and guess what, right? We don't see this linking up to the family. And so what we choose to believe is that none of this should be looked into, right? The DNA should be ignored. Well, the DNA, people want to ignore the DNA because why? Because the DNA doesn't link to the family. Right? That doesn't make sense. A stun gun, right? They're blaming this on something else, maybe train tracks or some other object. The reality is, talk to the experts. Talk to people like Dr. Doberson, who has worked cases involving stun gun deaths. And why is it that he says that's a stun gun? You know why they don't want to hear that, Ms. Banfield? Is because the stun gun doesn't make sense. Why would you stun gun your 6-year-old little girl 2 times to then murder her, beat her over the head, sexually assault her with a paintbrush, and guess what? Yeah, nobody wants to hear about that because it doesn't fit the narrative that the Ramseys did. They
new
ignore
blood, right? There's new blood there now. They say they want to solve this. I'm going to ask you to do something really hard because I'm running out of time and I have so many more questions. I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and I'm going to ask you to answer them in 40 seconds if you can.
Sure.
You think there were multiple intruders, and I don't know how you get to multiple intruders. And I also want to ask you, do you think that the Boulder police still have details that only the killer would know that have been kept in the vault all these years?
I never said that I believe that there's multiple intruders. There could be multiple intruders. Okay. And the reason for that, one specific reason, is that there's 2 different footwear impressions in the area where her body is found. So we know that as a possibility that there's 1 or 2 intruders, potentially. And then your other question, ma'am, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that other question.
That was, do you think Boulder police have kept details close to the vest in the vault that only the killer would know to really solve this case well?
Well, we would hope so, right? I mean, that's normally what law enforcement does, is that we hold back specific details of the murder in order to protect the integrity of the investigation. However, in this case, I will tell you a lot of things have been leaked, and as a result of that, I don't know how much of that integrity is really still intact in this case.
I am going to call you back. I have so many more questions, and we're going to continue looking at this. It's good to talk to you, John St. Augustine. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate your time.
And I mean what I say. I am calling John back because I got through half of these. So, okay. I do have this to tell you. The Ramsey family home still stands as a tragic reminder of this terrible murder. They bought it for $500,000 back in 1991. But a year after JohnBenét's murder, they moved out in 1997. An investor bought the house for $650,000 with planned proceeds from any sale supposedly going to go to the JohnBenét Ramsey Children's Foundation. But since then, the house has been unsellable. In March of this year, the owner pulled it off the market for the 6th time. I'm showing you some pictures inside. It is stunning. It is a sprawling 5-bedroom home. It's been beautifully renovated. It's been expanded multiple times in renovations. It was listed most recently for $6.2 million, but it was built back in 1927, and it includes a top-floor penthouse with 2 bathrooms and a kitchen. It is a showpiece, but apparently none of those details enough to entice a new buyer. Still to come, I wouldn't be the first person to point out all the similarities between the University of Idaho student murders from 2 years ago and Ted Bundy's sorority murders in Florida from decades ago. Bundy was one of the most infamous serial killers in history. Now one of his former lawyers says Brian Cobberger may have made the same inexplicable mistake that sent Ted Bundy to death row. He's talking to me next. One man studied law, the other studied criminology. One slipped into a sorority house in the dead of night and brutally attacked 4 students. The other allegedly slipped into an off-campus party house and brutally attacked 4 students. I could go on and on, but if you spend any time on true crime blogs or message boards, you might just see similarities between Ted Bundy, one of the most infamous killers of our time, and Brian Cobberger, who is charged with one of the most infamous murders, the Idaho student murders. For Bundy, of course, the carnage at the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State in 1978 was one stop along a long and bloody trail stretching all across the country. And Florida, as it happened, was Bundy's last stop because he was executed on Florida's death row. Now one of his former lawyers, who tried in vain to spare his life, sees yet another similarity with Brian Cobberger. He says both men traveled from states without death penalties, Colorado for Bundy and Washington for Cobberger, to states where capital punishment is actively enforced. Cobberger's Washington state even has mental health defenses, which Idaho does not. Here is John Henry Brown, the defense attorney who represented Ted Bundy, on the mistake he says both Bundy and Cobberger allegedly made.
Here Ted goes from a state where it's very unlikely he would get the death penalty. And I had this fateful conversation with him, which, interestingly enough, is rarely portrayed in any of the movies and such, because I think it was a really important conversation. And it was after I had handed Ted the papers on the death penalty in Colorado, and I said, I don't think it's going to fly. I think we're better off here, certainly, than anywhere else. Ted then interrupts me and he says, well, where would a person go in the United States to actually get the death penalty? I said, Florida or Texas. So he ends up in small town Florida. Now, the same thing is really interesting, really fascinating with Cobberger. Cobberger was living in Washington State, going to WSU. And Washington State, we don't have the death penalty. We also have an extremely active, vibrant, and realistic insanity defenses. Idaho has none. First of all, Idaho has the death penalty and seemed very anxious to use it. And they've outlawed, which I think it constitutionally wouldn't fly eventually, but they've outlawed the death penalty. So here some guy drives 10 miles from a state where there's no death penalty to a state where there's an active mental health defense to a state where there's no mental health defenses and the death penalty is very active. I think it's just fascinating to me.
Fascinating to a lot of us that if that is a mistake that Brian Cobberger made, if Brian Cobberger is the killer, it does parallel strangely with Bundy. Still to come, the so-called Black Swan, who shot her estranged husband to death more than 4 years ago, just found out exactly what that decision cost her. The victim's cousin, who testified against the killer, is live with me next. I, for one, am happy that she will no longer be in the news. Mostly because I kind of worry that people confuse her with me. Her name is Ashleigh Banfield. See what I mean? And Ashleigh has just been condemned to a very long stay at a Florida state prison. You might remember her case as being dubbed the Black Swan murder, and that's because Ashleigh was a ballerina and killed her husband back in 2020. She was convicted of manslaughter last summer, and we've been waiting long time since the summer to find out how long she was going to serve for that crime, and now she knows, and so do we. 20 years. With another 10 years probation after she gets out. As a refresher, Ashleigh met her husband, Doug Banfield, back in 2016. He was 30 years her senior. They married just 13 days later, and a baby arrived soon after that, as did a divorce. And prosecutors say Ashleigh killed Doug to win custody of that baby. She claims she simply shot an abusive husband, but the jury did not buy it. Well, didn't buy most of it anyway, because after a 6-day trial, she was acquitted of second-degree murder, but convicted of manslaughter. Joining me now is Tommy Banfield. He's Doug's cousin, and he's not only attended the trial, but he testified for the prosecution. Tommy, thanks so much for coming back on the program and being with me. And my condolences go out to your family. I'm not sure if this is sweet justice. I'm not sure how you feel. She is going away for 20 years. It could have been 30. I'd love to get your reaction to the sentence.
First, thanks for having us on. Our family appreciates the way you fairly treated this case, and we thank you for that. We're pleased with the sentence that was meted out today. We were given full access to speak about Doug's loss, both to our family, to their daughter, Emerson, and to Eva, his daughter. The judge kind of constrained us with some rules that were a little unusual, but we weren't able to talk to her as much as we wanted to talk to Ashleigh specifically. Like us, we don't like having her name so close to yours. We prefer to use her maiden name if we can do it, and we hope that's very soon. 20 years is halfway between the minimum of the points of 10 years. It's 30 years was the max. 25 would have been the minimum on second-degree murder. A little bit below that's 20 plus 10 years of probation. We're happy with that sentence. We've got 2 hurdles to overcome coming up in the next 2 months, and in a full year from now, by the time their expected appeal gets heard.
Tommy, you mentioned Emerson. That's Doug and Ashleigh's baby girl. I mean, it's horrifying. This is effectively a little girl who now doesn't have a dad, and I don't think she can see her mom. I think she's too young for that. What's happening with her? What's the plan for her?
She's still under the guardianship that was meted out by the Child Protective Services back when Ashleigh was arrested, and when she was convicted. Then she went to jail at that time just a few months ago. So she's been under the guardianship of Ashleigh's mother, Emerson's grandmother, Alicia, all the way back to Ashleigh being charged with the murder at the time. That continues to this date. We as a family, especially Eva and our family, have maintained a distance from doing anything about visitation. Eva in particular will have some rights to visitation in the future. Right now, that's the only thing that we know is that guardianship will remain while she goes through her appeal.
And what about the rest of you? Any visitation?
We haven't been able to do that. Really, we're going to have to work through that process. Doug's former attorney, that's our family attorney, Stephanie Murphy, who's been amazing through this case and this process, both for Doug and our family, is looking into those things in Manatee County after today's sentencing.
Emerson deserves to know her whole family. I've always felt that way. And when people weaponize kids, it just makes my blood boil. Again, Tommy, my condolences to you and your family. I hope this is some resolution of justice for you all. And thank you again for being on with me. I appreciate it.
It is. We thank you for covering this case.
Our pleasure, and the best of the holidays to you and the family. Still to come on this program, it was a hurricane story that twisted our hearts into knots. A sweet, innocent little dog abandoned and tied to a fence as the floodwaters rose around him in Florida. By the grace of God, a trooper spotted the pup and rescued him before he drowned. They named him Trooper and refused to return him to the owner who'd left him to die. Now something great has happened to Trooper, and we cannot wait to tell you what it is. That's next. As a true crime show, I get it. You don't come to me for feel-good stories, but tonight I'm mixing it up here. You got your murder and your mayhem in the A and B blocks, but now a very happy update to a story from earlier this fall. You may remember a dog that was tied up to a fence post amid rising floodwaters in Florida. Hurricane Milton was barreling towards the state. The cops saw this, and they rescued that pup and then tracked down its owner, charged him with aggravated animal cruelty. Thank you. The dog was renamed Trooper, and for weeks needed extra special TLC at a shelter. Since then, hundreds of people have applied to be Trooper's Forever family. And tonight, Trooper got one. A new mom and a new dad. There they are. And bonus, a canine sister named Dallas, who is also a bull terrier rescue. We just want to wish Trooper, I'm like dying here. God. We wish you endless belly rubs and zoomies around the yard. Who's a good boy? Thanks for watching, everybody. Chris Cuomo starts right now.
Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation, a sign of the times. I was not elected to take a side. I was elected to represent all sides. You know who says that? Someone who is leaving elected office in America. That's who. Senator Joe Manchin gave his final speech on the floor today. He's not going to seek re-election in West Virginia. You know why? Because the senator is a modern-day canary in a coal mine. He is a measure of just how much toxic gas of party politics it takes to kill someone with integrity. He left the Democrats and registered as an independent. Now, I know that's why the Democrats are going to roll their eyes and say the guy was a traitor. Well, you got a lot of them, because one of the big reasons that independents voted